So much, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to pursue this. Mr. Lee, President Biden's senior advisor for clean energy innovation and implementation, John Podesta, he stated just a few weeks ago that domestic manufacturing for clean energy technologies is going to depend on, in his words, China-dominated supply chains. That's what the White House is saying. They're going to depend on China-dominated supply chains. Do you believe that a reliance on China for critical components of clean energy technology presents, say, an increased cybersecurity risk to the grid and to American families?
Yes, so absolutely. And beyond the cybersecurity risk, even depending on them for what we need for critical national security use cases, even if they were trying to help us, outsourcing that to another country is probably not the best idea.
So, Mr. Coomer, what do you think? I mean, this is the administration.
So thank you, Senator, for the question. Your identification of the threats from China are very real, and we need to take those threats seriously. So what we need to be doing is really need to be thinking about what requirements do we need to put on manufacturers from China versus domestic manufacturing. The reality is we do need to go ahead and push on domestic manufacturing to ensure that we have more secure, resilient supply chains, both from a security perspective, but to the chairman's question, both from an availability perspective. We need to be able to produce these things domestically. Now, if they are being acquired from nations like China, we might need to think about additional requirements for security before we install them here in the United States.
Well, I wish you would take that message back to the White House. Mr. Lee, so here's a Wall Street Journal, cybersecurity. Could electric vehicles be hacked? And the picture inside shows a guy sitting in looking in his rearview mirror and seeing the spy sitting in the back seat. Mr. Chairman, there's a spy sitting in the back seat. How EVs might be hacked, right there.
Do we know that person?
Well, we don't, but it could be looking from this situation of what we're looking at and who's coming after us. We know likely where the sources of these are. So the Wall Street Journal, can electric vehicles be hacked? Subheading answers the question. Yes, there are all sorts of potential potential doors in EVs for hackers to take advantage of. So cybersecurity expert Jim Gwynn goes on to say some of the EV charging networks are very insecure because they weren't designed with security in mind. So do you believe that EVs and the EV charging network increases the cyber risk for consumers in the grid?
Yes, absolutely. When we look at any of these lower cost assets, to include distributed energy resources, it is very common for the priority to be, as was stated by Mr. Swick, first to market, no security built in. The cheaper the asset, usually the less security you have.
So Director Coomer, how's your office working with the rest of the department to ensure that the consumers are protected from this expanded cyber risk that has been pointed out in the paper, and this to Mr. Lee's comments about first to market, cheapest to be produced, highest risk?
Senator Barrasso, thank you for that question. We really do think we need to think about it across a couple of different ways. The first one is we need to think about what are the policies we need to be thinking about, what are the cyber baselines that we need to ensure DERs, EV stations, EV providers need to be considering. So that is an effort we have underway currently to develop those baselines for things like EV manufacturing. The second thing we're doing is we're leveraging the capabilities of our partnerships with industry, so the EV manufacturers themselves and the national laboratory. So we have an effort underway to conduct cyber testing of some of the charging stations out there so we can produce better security for some of these charging stations going forward. And then most recently, a couple of months ago, the White House convened a meeting with EV manufacturers to talk about the classified threats of some of these threats that are heading towards us and what we can collectively do to buy down those threats, sir.
So then, Mr. Swick, it's abundantly clear long-term integrity and cybersecurity of our critical energy infrastructure is going to depend on effective public-private partnerships. In your view, what could the federal government be doing better in its efforts to work with the private sector to establish greater cybersecurity for the critical infrastructure that we need to protect?
So AEP is very passionate about that public-private partnership, invests heavily. The efforts like ETAC that is being proposed right now is valuable because it gives access to the utilities themselves to high-side data, collaboration with intelligence sources directly versus some briefings that many of us attend. So I think that is a good step. The other piece to that is more clearances to make sure everybody can attend those. AEP will get there, but not everybody has the level of clearances potentially needed to get to those discussions that may be valuable. So continuing to push on that is very important. And then standardization of regulation across will very much help. And then
finally, to Director Coomer, previous administration, your role was filled by a Senate-confirmed office head working through the interagency process. Would it be helpful if the Department of Energy's cyber office had that same senior standing to signify how important it is of the threats that were coming out and the efforts to address that?
Senator, thank you for your continued support of the office. I'm proud to lead the Office of Cybersecurity, and it's an incredible mission that I'm lucky to lead from security and resilience from an all hazards perspective, as you know, sir. This is the mission that brought me back from the private sector to come back and lead this. It was too important to not do it. I'll defer to the President and Congress on the title of the position, but I can confidently tell you that I have access to the department's resources and leaders to accomplish this mission.
Mr. Lee, do you have an opinion on that?
I do. Dr. Kumar is fantastic. I've known him for years, and I'm surprised the position wasn't elevated. It absolutely has caused him to be sidelined in some meetings. And titles matter in government, whether we like it or not.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you. This is a great conversation.